Bette Davis, one of Hollywood's most iconic leading ladies, was as sharp off-screen as she was on it. Known for her fierce independence and acerbic wit, Davis built a reputation for being outspoken, tough, and unapologetically vulgar when it suited her. Behind her poised and dramatic screen presence was a woman who didn't hesitate to speak her mind, often in blunt, profanity-laced tirades. She clashed with directors, producers, and co-stars, earning a reputation for being difficult, but also deeply respected for her talent. Her legendary feud with Joan Crawford was peppered with biting insults and expletives, and she was known to curse freely when someone crossed her. Unlike many actresses of her era who carefully maintained a ladylike public persona, Davis reveled in her raw honesty. She was once quoted saying, "I survived because I was tougher than anybody else," a statement that perfectly encapsulates her gritty demeanor. Davis wasn't just vulgar for shock value, she wielded language like a weapon, often to assert power in a male-dominated industry. In an era of carefully managed images, Bette Davis stood out as a brash, brilliant force who didn't care whom she offended, as long as she got her point across. Tallulah Bankhead was one of Hollywood's most flamboyant and unapologetically vulgar stars. Known for her raspy voice, wild lifestyle, and razor-sharp wit, Bankhead broke nearly every rule of propriety in an era that prized polished glamour. She was openly bisexual, indulged in drugs and alcohol, and spoke candidly about her many sexual escapades, long before such topics were publicly acceptable. Her off-screen life was as dramatic and outrageous as any film, and she delighted in shocking others with her crude humor and blunt honesty. She famously said, "My father warned me about men and booze, but he never said a word about women and cocaine," a line that captured her irreverent spirit. On set and off, Bankhead cursed freely, smoked heavily, and defied societal norms with defiant flair. She was banned from multiple radio programs for her inappropriate remarks and once caused a scandal by appearing on stage without underwear. Despite, or perhaps because of, her antics, she became a cult figure of wit, rebellion, and fearless self-expression. In a time when actresses were expected to play by the rules, Tallulah Bankhead gleefully broke every one. Her legacy endures as a woman who lived loudly, vulgarly, and entirely on her own terms. Mae West was a trailblazer of sexual confidence and unapologetic vulgarity in Hollywood's golden age. Long before it was acceptable for women to speak openly about sex, West built her entire career on risque double entendres, suggestive humor, and a fearless persona that shocked censors and delighted audiences. She wrote her own plays and screenplays, often lacing them with provocative language and body jokes that pushed boundaries. Her famous quips, like "I generally avoid temptation unless I can't resist it," were more than punchlines, they were declarations of sexual independence. Off-screen, West was reportedly even more outrageous than her characters. She was known for her love of younger men, lavish lifestyle, and brash attitude. Studio executives and moral crusaders tried to rein her in, but she remained defiantly herself. When her 1926 play Sex was shut down by the authorities, she used the publicity to launch a film career. Her films were so racy they led to stricter censorship in Hollywood, yet she remained a star. Mae West wasn't just vulgar, she was smart, calculated, and ahead of her time. She used vulgarity as power, flipping the script on how women were expected to behave and turning it into comedy gold. Joan Crawford, one of the most glamorous stars of Hollywood's golden age, maintained a pristine public image, but privately, she was known for her intense temper, controlling nature, and vulgar language. Behind the polished facade was a woman who demanded total control, both in her home and on set, often expressing herself with a sharp tongue and brutal honesty. Her adopted daughter, Christina Crawford, famously exposed this darker side in the controversial memoir Mommy Dearest, painting Joan as abusive, foul-mouthed, and emotionally volatile. The infamous line "no wire hangers, ever," became symbolic of her explosive rages. Crawford's off-screen behavior often clashed with the era's expectations of feminine decorum. She was known to hurl expletives during arguments and had no patience for anyone she considered inferior or disrespectful. On the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, her feud with co-star Bette Davis erupted into profanity-laced confrontations, some of which crew members later recalled with astonishment. Though her legacy remains complicated, there's little doubt that Joan Crawford wielded vulgarity as a weapon, both to assert dominance and to protect herself in a cutthroat industry. She was glamorous, yes, but never soft, and she made sure no one ever forgot it. Marlene Dietrich, the German-born screen legend, was as bold and unconventional off-screen as she was on it. Known for her androgynous style, smoky voice, and seductive presence, Dietrich also had a reputation for being fiercely outspoken and unapologetically vulgar. Fluent in several languages, she reportedly swore with flair in all of them, often mixing English, German, and French curse words in the same sentence. She despised hypocrisy, disdained authority, and had no patience for the Hollywood elite's carefully curated personas. Despite her elegance and poise in public, Dietrich was known to be blunt, bawdy, and hilariously obscene among friends. She had a wicked sense of humor. Wasn't afraid to talk about sex, and regularly used crude language, especially when irritated or drunk. Crew members and close companions often described her as earthy and sharp-tongued, with a habit of tearing down egos with a single vulgar joke. Dietrich also openly defied gender and sexual norms, frequently wearing men's suits, engaging in affairs with both men and women, and refusing to play by the rules of the studio system. She used her wit, intelligence, and unfiltered speech to command respect in a male-dominated industry, and she didn't care who she offended along the way. Thelma Todd was a sparkling comedic actress of the early 1930s, known for her lively charm in films with the Marx Brothers and Laurel Hardy. Off-screen, however, she led a far more provocative and chaotic life. Far from her sweet and polished image, Todd was a hard-drinking party regular, often found mingling with gangsters, playboys, and Hollywood's wildest social circles. She was outspoken, known for her sharp tongue, biting wit, and a fondness for profanity. Her behavior behind closed doors shocked many of her more restrained contemporaries. She opened a glamorous cafe on the Pacific Coast Highway, which became both a hot spot for stars and a point of contention with underworld figures like Lucky Luciano. Her mysterious death in 1935, found dead in her garage from carbon monoxide poisoning, sparked endless rumors of murder, mob involvement, and Hollywood cover-ups. Though officially ruled an accident, many believe her vulgar associations and fearless attitude toward powerful men played a role in her untimely demise. Todd's life is a stark reminder of the hidden grit behind Golden Age glamour, a bold, bawdy figure who didn't play by the rules and paid a dark price for it. Ava Gardner was one of the most iconic stars of Hollywood's Golden Age, renowned for her smoldering beauty, earthy sensuality, and raw charisma. But behind the camera, she was as wild and unfiltered as they came, a true hellraiser who proudly defied the era's expectations of female behavior. Raised in rural North Carolina, Ava brought a tough, no-nonsense edge to Hollywood, quickly gaining a reputation for hard drinking, heavy swearing, and a volcanic temper. She had notoriously volatile relationships with powerful men, including Mickey Rooney, Artie Shaw, Howard Hughes, and most famously, Frank Sinatra. Her love life was tabloid fodder, and she rarely bothered to sugarcoat it. She once quipped that Artie Shaw was a real son of a bitch, and described her own lifestyle by saying, "I'm the world's greatest sinner when it comes to drinkin', but I'm the world's greatest lover when it comes to kissin'." Ava cursed like a sailor, fought like a brawler, and drank with the best of them. She was unapologetically herself, fierce, sexual, and foul-mouthed, at a time when women were expected to play it demure. Her vulgarity didn't tarnish her allure, it made her unforgettable. Miriam Hopkins was a critically acclaimed actress of the 1930s and 1940s, praised for her performances in films like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Trouble in Paradise, and The Heiress. Though she carried an air of refined Southern charm on screen, her off-screen reputation told a far different story. Behind the camera, Hopkins was famously temperamental, competitive, and unapologetically vulgar when provoked. Known for her dramatic mood swings and diva-like behavior, Hopkins was a constant source of tension on film sets. She frequently clashed with co-stars, directors, and especially Bette Davis. Their feud was legendary. While filming Old Acquaintance, 1943, Hopkins was reportedly so difficult and confrontational that Davis said working with her was like being in a cage with a wild animal. The two actresses exchanged insults and even physical slaps, both on and off screen. Hopkins didn't shy away from confrontation and was known to unleash screaming fits and profanity-laced tirades if things didn't go her way. Her need to control scenes, upstage co-stars, and dominate attention earned her a reputation as one of Hollywood's most difficult actresses. Beneath her genteel image was a fiercely combative and at times downright vulgar personality, especially by the standards of her era. Jean Harlow, dubbed the original blonde bombshell, was one of the most magnetic and groundbreaking stars of early Hollywood. With her platinum hair, saucy smile, and sizzling screen presence in films like Red Dust and Bombshell, she redefined sex appeal for the silver screen. But off-screen, Harlow was far from the soft-spoken, glamorous vixen the studios tried to present. She was loud, bawdy, and proudly vulgar. Nicknamed Baby by those close to her, Harlow delighted in telling dirty jokes, swearing freely, and shocking people with her bluntness. Studio executives winced at her off-color humor, but she didn't care. Her co-stars were often stunned by the contrast between her angelic appearance and her sailor-like vocabulary. She was openly affectionate, wildly flirtatious, and deeply irreverent, refusing to play the part of the demure Hollywood starlet. In fact, she often mocked the pretense and prudishness of her peers. Despite her wild spirit, Harlow was also warm-hearted and generous, deeply loyal to friends and colleagues. Her openness and lack of shame about sex and life made her seem decades ahead of her time. Jean Harlow didn't just break the mold, she blew it apart, laughing the whole way. Linda Darnell was one of the most stunning actresses of the 1940s, known for her sultry beauty and powerful performances in films like Forever Amber and A Letter to Three Wives. But behind her glamorous image was a woman marked by disillusionment, bitterness, and a defiant, vulgar edge that Hollywood couldn't tame. Pushed into the spotlight as a teenager, Darnell quickly became aware of how cruel and exploitative the studio system could be. Over time, that awareness hardened into anger, and she wasn't afraid to express it. By the 1950s, her career had stalled, and she turned to alcohol to cope. As her roles dried up, so did her patience. She was known to curse out producers, berate casting agents, and call out the hypocrisy of a system that once worshipped her and later discarded her. Her once carefully crafted public persona unraveled as she embraced a raw, unfiltered attitude in both speech and behavior. She could be caustic, fiery, and unapologetically vulgar, often making people uncomfortable with her bluntness. Her tragic death in a house fire at age 41 added to her legend, a gorgeous, gifted woman destroyed in part by a system she saw clearly and cursed freely. Paulette Goddard was a striking beauty of Hollywood's golden age, best known for her roles in Modern Times and The Great Dictator, both opposite Charlie Chaplin. Behind her glamorous screen presence was a fiercely independent and outspoken woman who didn't shy away from taboo topics, especially sex, money, and power. In an era when actresses were expected to remain coy and compliant, Goddard was refreshingly blunt, often peppering her conversations with salty language and risque humor. She had high-profile relationships, including a rumored common-law marriage to Chaplin, and later married actor Burgess Meredith and novelist Eric Maria Remarque. Goddard was unapologetic about her romantic and financial ambitions. She once reportedly said, "I've always believed in getting as much as I can out of life, and men." Her frankness about money and her refusal to play the innocent ingenue gave her a reputation as both bold and vulgar, depending on who was judging. Off-screen, she was known for throwing raucous parties, drinking freely, and cracking crude jokes with ease. Goddard played the Hollywood game on her own terms, smart, sexy, and sharp-tongued, and never let public expectations keep her from saying exactly what she thought. Susan Hayward was a fiery, no-nonsense actress who rose to fame in the 1940s and 1950s with powerhouse performances in films like I Want to Live and Smash Up, The Story of a Woman. Though she was celebrated for portraying strong, suffering women on screen, her off-screen persona was anything but demure. Known for her temper and sharp tongue, Hayward carried herself with a toughness that often bordered on abrasive, and in private, she could be downright vulgar. Coming from a tough Brooklyn background, Hayward never fully adapted to Hollywood's polished social scene. She drank heavily in later years and was rumored to have gotten into barroom brawls and violent outbursts, especially when drunk. Her language was famously salty, and she wasn't afraid to curse out producers, co-stars, or anyone who crossed her. She was fiercely independent, deeply distrustful of Hollywood's double standards, and didn't hesitate to speak her mind, often loudly and with four-letter words. Hayward's career was filled with acclaim, including an Oscar win, but her reputation behind the scenes was of a woman who could be combative, profane, and unpredictable. She was, in many ways, tougher than the tough women she played, with a mouth to match. Jane Russell was one of the most recognizable sex symbols of the 1940s and 1950s, thanks in large part to her breakout role in The Outlaw, which famously showcased her voluptuous figure. Marketed as the ultimate pin-up girl, Russell was the subject of controversy and censorship battles, but what many didn't see behind the camera was her brash, bawdy personality that matched her bold image. She was known for her sarcastic wit, dirty jokes, and unapologetically loud behavior. Far from the demure Hollywood starlet archetype, Russell swore freely, teased her male co-stars, and often joked about her own sexuality with a level of comfort that shocked studio executives. She reportedly loved hanging out with the crew more than the elite social circles, where she felt no pressure to filter her language or behavior. "They know I'm just one of the guys," she once said. Her unfiltered mouth and earthy humor earned her a reputation for being one of the most blue actresses on set, though she later embraced Christianity and took more conservative stances. During her Hollywood peak, Russell was anything but reserved. She was bold, brassy, and proudly vulgar, a tough, funny woman who owned her image and never apologized for her attitude. Would you like quotes, anecdotes, or more about their private lives and scandals? There's no shortage of juicy stories from this era.